what are you doing? How are you? It's me, Nick Digilio. Thanks for checking out my YouTube channel. Maybe you're checking me out on Patreon, and that's the channel where you can actually donate some money to help me out. All the videos that I do and the movie reviews that I do, all the entertainment, and the podcasts that I do, all for free. You get all that stuff for free. So what you need to do is donate to help those things keep going and to maybe keep a little peanut butter in my pantry. I don't know. Anyway, you can donate $3, $6, $25 a month, whatever you want to do. Patreon.com/NickDShow. Patreon.com/NickDShow. Pick a tier, donate today. Thank you very much. You can hear me on 2 podcasts on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. One of them is called The Nick D Podcast. It's an entertainment pop culture podcast filled with great laughs and real stories. Esmeralda Leon is my co-host. I have regular guests, and we talk about entertainment and all kinds of cool stuff. I review movies, and we talk about TV and books and theater and sports and wrestling and music, all kinds of great stuff. And that is Tuesdays and Fridays on RadioMisfits.com. You can download it. Actually, you can go to any of your platforms to get any of your podcasts. It's available. My second podcast is called That Show Hasn't Been Funny in Years, an SNL podcast. It's all about the best sketch comedy show of all time. That, of course, would be Saturday Night Live. And I am an expert on Saturday Night Live. I know more about Saturday Night Live definitely than you do, without question. And most anybody does. And so I share that knowledge and the fun stories, and we have guests, and we talk about really cool stuff. It's all about Saturday Night Live, and you need to check it out. Every Wednesday, a brand new episode drops at RadioMisfits.com and at every platform available where you get your podcasts. So the 2 podcasts are the Nick D Podcast and That Show Hasn't Been Funny in Years, an SNL podcast. And also, now Radio Misfits is streaming. We are now streaming 24/7. So you can turn it on. It's like turning on the radio, live streaming 24/7. All of the really cool podcasts available at Radio Misfits are there. And you can hear music, and it's unheard music from unsigned bands. If you have an unsigned band, you should check out RadioMisfits.com, get your band on there, and you can get on the live streaming, and everybody can hear it in the world. And it's 24/7, and it's free. RadioMisfits.live. RadioMisfits.live, live streaming 24-hour network running podcasts and music. You can hear my podcasts daily. At 3 p.m., you can hear the Nick D Podcast. Every single day at 3 p.m. live, you can hear it at RadioMisfits.live. And you can hear my Saturday Night Live podcast every single day at 9 a.m. RadioMisfits.live. So they're streaming live. You can download the podcast, all that really cool stuff. Lots of really cool stuff happening with Radio Misfits. And that 24/7 live streaming feed is fantastic. It's like having the radio on. Just turn it on. 3 p.m. every day, the Nick D Podcast. 9 a.m. every day, my Saturday Night Live podcast. So get to it. You can also hear me on Fridays on The Steve Cochran Show. I am the film critic at WLS Radio. That's right, the big 89 a.m., the legendary radio station. You can hear me there, too. I've been a film critic for a very long time. I'm a member of the Chicago Film Critics Association. In fact, I'm a senior member, man. I was there since the first day, when there were like 6 of us in a room going, you want to start this thing? Okay, let's do it. Who's got the weed? So anyway, and over the years, it's become bigger and bigger, and I was in and out of the association for a while. I'm back in, and they started this thing called the Chicago Critics Film Festival. That's this thing. And it's been going on for almost a week. Tomorrow night, actually, I'm posting this now. So tonight is the last night. 7 days in, we've seen a bunch of movies. I will give you my list in order of all the movies that I've seen. I think by the end of the fest, which is tonight, I will have seen, I think, 19 films in 7 days, 19 or 20 films in 7 days. And I've been reviewing them every single day, giving you full rundowns of what happened during every single night of the festival. And tonight I'll be talking about night 6, day 6. And I'll review 3 movies that were there. And then at the end of the fest, closing night is tonight, and you can see two movies starring Jerry as himself is a documentary that'll be at 5 o'clock, and then at 7 o'clock is the closing night big comedy called Theater Camp. So those are the closing night things, and we'll have a big party afterwards. It'll be great. Tonight, day 6, I'll give you a rundown. Saw 3 movies, and they were all good. One was great. One was really, really strong and really, really great and really, really powerful. The other 2 were good. And I will tell you about them right now, as I have been doing. And I do, again, want to give credit to everybody at the Chicago Critics, the association, Chicago Film Critics Association, who put this together. The producers are Brian Tellerico and Eric Childress, who I've known for many, many years. They produced this whole thing, started the whole thing, and there's a whole bunch of people who program it and do Q&As and a whole bunch of people running around. And all the really cool people at the Music Box Theater. It takes place at the Music Box Theater. I love the Music Box Theater. I love hanging out there, and I love everybody who works there, from Ryan, who's the GM, to everybody all the way down the list. All the people that work there, the people that sweep up and serve you the popcorn and get you your beer in the lounge and all that stuff and mix you drinks. Every single person that works at that place is great, and I spend way too much time there. Because I'm there for maybe 2 hours to see a movie. I end up spending 4.5 hours there because I love talking to the people that work there. They're awesome. Anyway, spending a lot of time at the Music Box this past week. So night 6, 3 movies were shown. Here they are. The first was a documentary, and it's called "And the King Said What a Fantastic Machine." And the King Said What a Fantastic Machine, or Fantastic Machine for short. Now, this is a documentary that was put together by a combination of the Danish and the Swedish. They got together to make this documentary. 2 directors are credited for it, Axel Danielsen and Maximilian van Eerstek. They put this thing together, and it is about the moving image. It is about the camera and how people have been fascinated by taking pictures, by capturing images, and by altering them and changing them, and how the image, the camera, became moving pictures, and how we use that to document reality and then fucking document lies and manipulate it and change it. And it's about the history of how we're all basically, once we became obsessed with this eye that we have and the inner eye that we have in capturing images on the camera, we also became obsessed with changing those images, altering them for our own desires, and basically like fucking with the world of cameras. And now this documentary, which begins at the very, very first photograph ever taken and goes all the way up now through influencers and all these dickheads on social media who, it goes all the way up to YouTube, and it goes all the way up to TikTok, and how we all have cameras and everybody is obsessed with their cameras, and it's not real until you take out your phone and take 27 pictures of it, and anybody under 30 now is a jackass running around trying to film everything they ever do, and selfies and all that shit. We've become completely fucking obsessed. It's not real until we take a picture or we video it with our goddamn cameras, and there are millions and millions of cameras and millions of people taking millions and millions of pictures and films and all that shit, and it's become ridiculous. And the movie is about tracing back the very origin of the very first picture, how our eyes capture it, how we capture truth, and then we alter it in our brain, and how we've taken that philosophy and taken it through to the technology. It talks about the beginnings of television, the beginning of film, advertising, what we use the images for, how they are completely manipulated, and how it started basically in World War II with propaganda films, and how do we tell the truth from fiction, and how do we tell realism and real stuff from propaganda and lies. And it's all about that, and how you can manipulate things to make people think one thing and trick them into think that they're seeing one thing when they're not. They think they're seeing and hearing the truth when in fact it's all bullshit. And that's what it's about. There's some great footage in this movie. There's some interesting stuff and some unseen footage that's really great. But for the most part, this is nothing really new. The history of the moving image has been done a million times in documentaries and in fictional movies as well. I mean, the first movie that comes to mind in my head about that, the origins of that kind of stuff, is Martin Scorsese's Hugo. But there are a ton more than that. And so it's not a history that I'm unfamiliar with. So I did not really learn anything. The only thing that I really learned was that, in fact, we're all a bunch of fucking morons. I mean, that's the message. Because the first half of the movie is fascinating and interesting because they do have some really cool footage I've never seen before in the early days of manipulating television, manipulating film, and doing studies on people, when commercials became very popular on television, and how those images were manipulated to brainwash people. That stuff's really interesting. But when you get in the second half of the movie, I should say final third, now when we hit modern times with influencers, so fucking stupid, with influencers making millions of dollars by having followers, and TikTok, TikTok is the stupidest fucking thing of all time. It is. It's the stupidest fucking thing of all time. And you want proof of it, see this movie, because it's like proof that TikTok is so fucking stupid. And there are so many fucking stupid things that people are doing with this thing that I'm talking to. I'm just doing a video to give you movie reviews. And that's part of it. That's part of social media. It's part of what this movie is about. But the stuff that we've all seen and the footage that we've all seen, just basically people doing incredibly stupid shit on TikTok and incredibly stupid stunts and stuff like that. So as interesting as it is, and I think it's worth seeing, it's a short film. It's only about 85 minutes long, so it's short. It doesn't break any new ground, didn't teach me anything, but there's a lot of really cool footage in it. There's some amusing stuff, and there's some pretty potent statements made about how film and image can be manipulated to trick all of us, and how we've succumbed to that, and we are now doing the tricking. We are now the influencers. We spent years being, hypnotized by television and tricked by it and manipulated by it, and now we are in control of it. There are millions of people with these fucking phones doing all kinds of crazy shit. And that's why the final third of the movie, there's nothing really new in it. It's just absolute confirmation that most of the people on the planet are fucking stupid. And most of the people on the planet use this device for stupidity. So that's all there is to it. We're all a bunch of morons, and phones make us fucking dumber. And people obsessed with selfies and TikTok and influencers and all that shit and taking pictures of everything and doing anything and altering it to make it look real when it's not real. You're all a bunch of fucking morons, and this movie just confirms it. So, didn't teach me anything new. Here's what I knew coming out of it. I knew that the camera was an interesting, incredible invention, and that it changed over time and became different over time. And now 90% of the people on the planet are morons. That's what I learned from the movie. It's good though. The second movie was a movie that everybody was really talking, hyping. A lot of the guys that I talked to in the association who had seen it were really hyping it. It's a movie called Brother. It's a Canadian film directed by Clement Virgo, who was there tonight for a Q&A. Came in, and nice crowd for the movie. And it is a stylistic movie about two brothers being raised by a single mother, and it jumps around in time. There's an older brother and a younger brother, and the older brother is like the hero to the younger brother, and they're living in not poverty, but yeah, almost poverty. The woman the single mother has to raise them by working extra double shifts as a waitress, and they barely have any food, but she makes sure that they are eating, she makes sure that they are going to school, and she makes sure that they are going to be raised correctly. The father is out of the picture, and they're growing up in sort of disenfranchised areas in and around Canada. It's basically mostly an African American community. Their parents, the kids, the brothers' parents are immigrants, and it tells the story about what happens when these people show up here in Toronto, not in America, but in Toronto or outside of Toronto in Canada, and what happens. And most of it takes place, it jumps between time periods, but a lot of it takes place, the most important stuff takes place right around in the summer of 1991. And the older brother wants to be a hip hop producer and a music maker, and his best friend is a DJ, and his younger brother looks up to him, and they're raised by this single mother. There's gang activity and guns and all kinds of crazy stuff that happens. And the movie is told it jumps between time periods. There's a romance involved in it with the younger brother and another daughter of immigrants who lives in the same complex they live in. There's gun violence and shootings and all kinds of stuff happens. And it's about brotherhood. It's about motherhood. It's about living in the hood. And it captures a specific moment in time. In 1991, a lot of it takes place, and then it takes place 10 years later in 2001. And it's about a single mother raising these two boys, how they grow up to men, and the culture and the world in which they live. It's a good movie. I don't necessarily think that the jumping between time periods is a great stylistic choice. It's, as good as the acting is, a lot of really terrific performances in this movie and some fresh faces. It is beautiful to look at. It's very well photographed. The use of music is great. The score is good. Virgo's an interesting visual stylist. But this is nothing, again, like this first documentary that I was talking about, nothing new here, like the documentary about the camera and how it's altered and how it can be manipulated. And here, the inner city struggles of single mother and two kids, and as they grow up, hero worshiping and living this life. This is nothing new. We've seen this kind of movie a million times before, although it's not a real fresh take on it. It is well acted. You do care about the characters. Stylistically, it's kind of interesting. I don't think it all works jumping back and forth between time periods like it does in the movie. But it's effective, and it's well acted, and you do care about these characters, and you like them. It's not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's been done a million times before, and I think it's been done better in the past. But this is a solid film. It's well directed. It's beautiful to look at. The use of music is great, and the performances are really, really stellar. Really, really good. So, nothing new here. It's called Brother. Some people, in the theater were really moved by it. I know a lot of my friends in the Film Critics Society really love this movie and were kind of blown away by it. I wasn't. I have to say that my emotions were in check during this movie. I admired it. I liked the characters, and I did care about what was happening on screen. I thought it was professionally directed and beautifully photographed, and I thought the cast was really strong. It's just nothing very new, and it did not grab me emotionally like I have been grabbed by a few other movies that have been shown at this festival. So, the movie Brother, which I do not believe has a distributor. So it's one of those movies this is a movie that should have a distributor. It's not terrible. It's a solid piece of work. It's a beautiful, professional-looking movie that's really beautifully acted, and it deserves a distributor. Not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination. Did not break any new ground at all, but still solid and good. But the movie that was really terrific was the final film of tonight, after Brother, in which the director had a Q&A with the audience afterwards, and went very, very well. From what I hear, I was not in the room when it happened, but so after that, there was the final film of the night, and that was called Revoir Paris. Revoir Paris, which translates to Paris Memories. And this is a film directed by Alice Winocour, and Alice Winocour had a film that played back in 2015 at the Chicago Critics Film Festival and did very well, and this is her second film to be shown here. And it stars, the main star is Virginie Efira. And if you remember her, she's been in a bunch of great stuff, terrific French actress, been a bunch of great stuff. The last great thing she was in was Benedetta, which was Paul Verhoeven's fantastic nun lesbian movie, which is awesome. But anyway, she was the lead in that, and now she's the lead in this. And it's a simple premise. It takes place in modern times, and it's about a woman played by Virginia Efira, and she ends up going into a French cafe to get out of the rain, and it's a pretty crowded cafe, and she notices all the people that are in there, and then there's a mass shooting, as we now know in everyday news. It happens all over the world. It happens in America more than any other fucking place. Don't get me started. But she's in this French cafe, and there is a mass shooting. Someone comes in with an automatic weapon and wipes out the entire cafe. And she is injured and traumatized. And the movie picks up 3 months after this horrible, horrible massacre happens. And she's trying to get her life back together. She's dating and in love with and living with a doctor. And she is, when she comes back after 3 months, she can't remember anything that happened in the cafe after the bullets started to fly. She completely forgets everything that happens. And the movie is about her trying to remember and reconstruct what happened. And she goes to goes back to the cafe where they are now having encounter groups and therapy sessions with the survivors of this massacre, and they're all trying to be there for one another with counselors and things like that, trying to relive what happened, come to some sort of closure. And she is trying to piece together what happened, and some people are telling her that she was terrible during this event, that she doesn't remember that she locked herself in a bathroom and wouldn't let anybody else in while the active shooter was going on, and she doesn't remember any of that. And suddenly memories start to come back, and she starts to piece this horrible traumatic event back together in her brain, and it's about how this event that she went through affects her life in general, her every day-to-day life, her relationship with her partner, her friendships, her work, and just dealing with other people, and dealing with the people who were also a part of this shooting. And then the movie becomes about dealing with shared trauma. And it really nails that very well. And ultimately, she starts to remember what happened, pieces it together, talks with other survivors, other people who were in the restaurant with her, other people who were friends or relatives of people who were killed in that restaurant. And it's about piecing back this piece, the piece by piece, this puzzle of what happened in her, that she couldn't remember during this event. And also, it is really about what trauma does to someone, what it does to their lives, and shared trauma, and how there was always going to be a connection between someone who shared that trauma and always going to be a disconnection between the people who weren't. So husbands and wives of people who were there, they can't connect anymore. There is something missing. One of the movies that it reminded me of Fearless, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, which was also a movie about a shared trauma. In this case, a horrible plane crash in which a bunch of people were wiped out on a plane. And the survivors of this plane crash try to get their lives back together, but the most traumatized ones can only identify with the people that were in the crash. And that's what happens in this movie. There's an interesting relationship that happens between the lead and another guy who was there celebrating his birthday. There is a really interesting relationship that happens between the woman, the lead, and a girl whose parents were killed, and she wants to figure out what it was like for them during their last day. And they went to a museum, and what were their last words to each other, and she's traumatized by the whole thing. And then it becomes like almost a detective thing where the lead, Ifira, is trying to find a guy that she remembers holding her hand while the massacre was happening, and it becomes like a detective story trying to find this guy. So it's about shared trauma in every significant way. It's about what happens to your relationships, how they change, and how some end. Because this trauma, if you weren't there that night, you will never understand. Even if you're married to the person, even if you're in love with the person, if you weren't in that room during that trauma, during that horrible event, you will never understand it, and there's always going to be a wall put up. And sometimes relationships end because of these things that happen, and that's what this movie's about. It's really beautifully put together. The story is told magnificently, really tightly directed, and it completely nails what it's like to be a part of something that happens, a tragedy, or something that causes deep, significant trauma and damage. And if you're a big group of people or a group of people who shared this, that's something that no one else has shared with you, and there is a bond that those people will have forever. That's what this movie's about. And it is intense. It's beautifully made. And again, the lead performance, Virginie Ifira, is a terrific actress, and it's one of the best actresses in France. And she is supported by an incredible cast who play the people who shared the horrible event and the people who are trying to deal with the not being able to comprehend what happened to the people that were part of this trauma. It is a timely movie in that we have mass shootings all the time now, especially in fucking America. So we're aware of that, and it's also a movie that is a great showcase for terrific performances across the board. Everybody in this movie is great, and a great lead performance. It is moving. It has a wonderfully, overwhelmingly beautiful ending. I was very emotionally, as opposed to Brother, which I was not emotionally invested in kind of at all. This one made me cry. This one really got me. It's intense, it's scary, and it really shows you what a terrifying experience that happens to people and how it affects their real lives forever. So it's about shared trauma and piecing a puzzle back together that you can't remember, and it's beautifully done. It's a terrific movie. It's called Revoir Paris, or Paris Memories, and I believe it opens in July, if I'm not mistaken. It opens in July. A terrific movie. So 3 good movies, 3 movies worth seeing. One's a great one. The last one was great. The other 2 were good. The first 2 movies being movies that really don't do anything new. They're fine. The last movie does do some new things, is more timely, and does things much more emotionally and much more effectively, in my opinion. So 3 for 3, solid day at the theater, at the festival, and today was day 6, and it's tonight actually, May 11th, is the final night of this, and it's been an amazing festival. It's been great. I love being there. I love hanging out with my friends and talking to the critics and hanging out, seeing great movies and talking about movies. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful week. And it'll all close down tonight with 2 movies and a big party afterwards. And another really amazing, successful, and fun, and brilliantly put together and just a great festival put together by my friends. I couldn't be happier. So those are the movies that are out there, and you can check me out on Patreon. You can check me out all over the place. And again, check out my podcast and all that cool stuff. And the final night is tonight, and I will drop the final video tomorrow, which will include my list of the movies that I've seen, every single movie ranked in order, from my favorite to my least favorite, ranked. So you'll get the full list and full reviews and closing night coverage tomorrow. So thanks for checking it out. And if you want to go to closing night, it's musicboxtheater.com.